Welcome to the Manufacturing Roundtable podcast, where we dig into how real people are solving real problems in manufacturing from the floor to the supply chain. I'm Eric Chiampoli. I've spent the past 2 decades helping manufacturers strengthen operations through lean systems, value stream mapping, and leadership development. In this episode, I'm joined by Richard Mokuolu, a supply chain and logistics expert with deep experience applying lean thinking beyond the four walls of production. Richard brings a thoughtful perspective on what it really takes to improve performance across your complex supply chains and how real leadership shows up in the production floor in goods, people, and services, as well as information. I hope you find this conversation useful and interesting. Let's get into it. So, Richard, we met like 14, 15 years ago? And we were working together on a project way long ago, many moons, I even forgot. And we reconnected like 5 or 6 years ago, I think, through some of these startup incubators, and we reconnected. We also got happenstance. We got introduced by other people that knew us. Can you walk us through some of your journey and how you got here to be such a logistics expert?
I'm never an expert. I'm learning every day.
Well, that's what makes you an expert. You know that you don't know something. People who think they know everything are not the smartest people.
Well, I'm smart enough to know I'm not that smart. But yeah, no, I think my journey has been one of just like uh experiencing the pain firsthand. So I'm a mechanical engineer. That's my whole background. And I worked at GE Aerospace in the operations leadership program building jet engines. So I'm Six Sigma certified. I'm Lean certified. I did the whole nine. I was like a quality engineer. I've been a supervisor for second or third shift, which is like special people who work in second or third shift. If you can manage people in second or third shift, I think it is a separate badge of honor. um,
Yes, it is. Graveyard shift.
exactly. They know what they're doing. And went into just the corporate strategy, right? So was fortunate to be part of their like corporate auto staff program, which is like a fancy way of saying is flow around the world fighting fires. So when oil and gas prices tanked, I was in Lubbock, Texas, reorganized the supply chain there before the Baker Hughes spinoff and everything. So and then to your point, I had like projects on the side that I was working on, which you were a huge part of in making that like actual like a reality. And because it's related to like kind of like the whole defense space, I was like, there needs to be a better way to actually just spin up new product ideas, like and just go to market, right? Because the current playbook is just like, hey, I just go to China, find one tier one, and they're just gonna manage everything for me. I just push the button, hit print. But the problem with that is like you really don't own your supply chain, right? You're just like you're leaving the hands of someone who you're hoping is gonna protect. And there are numerous horror stories of like, hey, we had this Kickstarter. It was very successful. Before our first shipment was delivered, we saw Amazon had like 30,000 knockoffs already. And like, how did it leak? Right. And these are really real things. When you look at like the big players like the GEs, the Apples of the world, the way they manage this is they actually own their entire supply chain. They own all the relationships. From Foxconn to the tier twos that supply Foxconn to the tier threes, even that's the raw materials of where the aluminum is coming from. Right. And so our whole focus really parts of it is basically helping people to own their supply chains, right? But doing it in a way where you don't have to hire 10,000 supply chain engineers or supply chain managers to manage the whole process for you. You can leverage like software and AI to help you do this much better. Um, and so like our whole thing is because we're doing this, we have a lot of like view of how global supply chains have operated and evolved over time, and just seeing how I would even say before the tariffs happened there was a huge demand for local manufacturing, right? Where people wanted to manufacture things locally. By the way, only insiders knew of this, right? People, I think a misconception of people who are really not inside the manufacturing space think like, oh, it's only because of tariffs that people want to make things in America. That's really not the case. It's not the case.
These IP security risks have been there for the past 20 years. Did you see the outspoken comments from Kevin O'Leary? He's like, I've seen it firsthand. We start off with an idea and then we see, like what you said, I see my product on the market before we even are at market, and they're stalling me so that they can steal my market. This is a real threat. he was a very zealous supporter of these tariffs. I mean, there's consequences to this stuff, but like what you're saying, this all of a sudden make it an America thing has been happening for a long time. It's just like, not everything can be made here the way you would want to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what's interesting? Even we can talk about the IP security concerns for even like when you look at like for people focus on climate, right? If you're looking at like reducing carbon emissions, you want to manufacture things as close to customers as possible without having to just go overseas, like burn a bunch of carbon emissions. So there are multiple different steps. Even when you look at like I remember when I was working in like the big corporate environments, I was noticing that when we would sign a deal with like a big player in a country, right? Um, they will basically have we call like local content requirements, where you basically have to manufacture things locally. The content needs to be manufactured locally in the country. But then we need to figure out, okay, who are the partners that can manufacture this in the country? And a lot of times, sometimes they really exist. So you need to find someone and then build them up, and then partner with them to be that local content requirement vendor, right? And so we're also going to see, like, I think India is another big hub that we're chatting about is going to be huge. It's already big. It's going to be growing exponentially.
Yes, and you haven't seen it, but I have. The amount of spend into infrastructure for roadways is impressive. Like these are not little highways. These are serious investments. Like you when you drive through this construction zone, you know that like there's something coming and they're putting in infrastructure to go right over the city on these they call them flyovers in Gujarat that are going to go right over the city to be able to supply that ability for a truck to go from A to B in 15 minutes versus 2 hours because the traffic is impressive as well.
But the traffic is impressive. No, no, absolutely. You know what's interesting? Like, I think it's not going to be either or. I don't think it's going to be like 100% no China, only US. I think as we evolve, we're going to realize that there's certain hubs that are really, really good at certain things, right? It's like, hey, for these electronic things, like you just similar to like TSMC, right? Where it's like it's almost like a singular like capability is like developed in Taiwan, right? Where it's like they can just outcompete people in semiconductors because the density and just the equipment and the investment over decades.
The technology, the resources, and the materials are readily available within their reach. They don't need to put it in a truck or a container and drive it for long distances to get it to where it needs to go.
Exactly. And so like our whole thesis within parts is like how do you actually build a network that can manage that chaos of understanding, okay, this is actually where you want to go and still be competitive, but here's a backstop in case this like falls through.
And you compile that initiative along with some of these infrastructure supports from governmental elements. It's like, hey, I can't find a supplier that has everything, but this guy could potentially invest and do that. Let's work with them so that we can build that supply chain in our own backyard versus overseas, which requires all kinds of logistics. And if you look at the statistics on how many shipping containers end up at the bottom of the ocean, you'd be astounded. They don't all make it. They fall off the boat.
Yep, yep, absolutely, and some also fall off the boat as well. So it's like people really don't talk about it as much.
$25 million of Porsche cars went to the bottom of the ocean during COVID. Oh, beautiful custom cars. Oh my God. Those were one of a kind. Not anymore. It's a, it's part of the aquarium now.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think the future is going to be very interesting. I think I think there's needs to be huge investment. I think this is the best time to build up your factory. If you have an existing shop, now's the time to be thinking about, okay, well, how do I position my shop for the future?
RFQs are on the rise every day. It's getting more and more. And I've seen some of my customer base are getting inquiries from Europe.
That's huge.
Yeah. People are calling us now looking for stuff. It's like it came from where? That came from Germany? That's interesting. Like what do they want?
But by the way, based on RFQs, I'll be anxious to get your like take on this. But I feel like non-US, specifically China-based factories are so good at being fast at sending quotes back, right? And just quoting things. Sometimes even to the detriment of just like they may not have all the information, but just give you a number, right? And they just figure out later they might eat. eat a loss in that first order.
Yeah. Get the customer in the door.
Exactly, which I think is a very interesting strategy, like, could work really, really well. I feel like for a lot of, like, US-based suppliers, there's not been a lot of, like, muscle focus on, like, the front end of the house of, like, because usually there's, like, an anchor customer, right? And you
Expensive.
exactly. It's very expensive,
Very expensive.
and I think even just the art of quoting, I think you need some, like, institutional knowledge to do really well repeatedly, automatically, right? And I think when you go to this new business, there's a study that shows like the faster your response time, the higher the probability of you winning that business, right?
Well, you guys measure exactly that on parsimony,
Exactly.
how fast the quotes are coming through. So you see real time on who's good at it and who's bad at it. I've seen some softwares out there for machine shops that help you quote things fast, but knowing what really happens on the shop floor, some of these things scare me because there's a lot of things that go into selections. You need to understand the process in order to quote something. What do I need for tooling? What do I need for fixturing? What do I need for other things outside of this part? And that's why you see, oh, we get these big price breaks if I buy a million pieces. Yeah, because I got to put $10,000 into tooling and fixturing and just writing programs with my CNC programmer who's $100 an hour and in order to be able to make this 10 parts. So, well, why is it $5,000 for 5 pieces? You're not paying for the pieces. You're paying for all the things that go into making that thing. The material is the cheapest part. It's all the things and the people that need to do the work. So I understand your question firsthand in watching these things happen or not happen. I've done value stream maps on it. Why does it take you 12 weeks to get a quote? I'm like, the customers must be livid by then. Oh no, it's always been like this. They're used to it. And I'm like, I would not wait 12 weeks for a quote. I would have got quotes from other places and already placed the order by the time you finished it. Well, we need to really understand what the customer needs. I get it, but you've been doing this for 50 years. How many things can the customer need in so many different ways that isn't something you haven't already learned from doing this for so long? What I notice is that you have one person who knows how to quote, and that person is very important. How do you scale that? So I get 10 RFQs, it's going to go in line, and that person's going to work on it. It could take weeks. Systems and software don't really exist for these magical things to be able to, well, okay, so you want to make this product, there's 48 pieces in it, and I got to go out and figure out where am I going to get this stuff in order to quote it. How much does that cost that I need to put into this? If I'm making all the things myself, okay, that's faster. But most of the times when you're quoting something, you got to go out to the market. So I go ask 10 people for a quote. It just happened to me recently trying to make a custom conveyor. Supplier told us, yeah, we can get that belt and we can have it. We have it in stock. And then, oh no, we don't have it in stock. What about these three versions? Well, how long's that? Oh, it's 4 weeks, but you told me it was in stock. My bad. Okay, hey, motor drive. Do you have this horsepower with this orientation and this pulley attachment with this drive gear? Oh yeah, we got it. How much? $1,200. Okay, great. Is it in stock? We can get it to you in 3 weeks. You sure? Yeah, yeah. Pinky swear. Still hasn't arrived. So it's like you get all these things. How do you quote something really fast when you have to rely on such a wide supply chain? I always ask the question is like, if you work with these suppliers all the time, why aren't you regularly getting updates on things that you buy on all the time? You'd be surprised how many times I do a value stream map and I'm talking to customer service and no one's talking to the customer for forecasting.
Incredible. Incredible.
Like, what do you mean? What do you don't ask the customer, what does your year look like? You think they don't? Well, some don't have a sales force. Okay, the mom and pop corner store, hardware store doesn't have a forecast, but you're working with these large OEMs. You mean they don't have a forecast on what they're going to do? They have investors to satisfy. They have a forecast. Why aren't you asking them? Oh, well, we don't do that. So then you get surprised with a 40 million piece order out of nowhere when they knew it was coming 9 months ago. You could have prepared for it. And then they're mad at you because it's 16 weeks lead time. You got to be talking upstream all the time. So a quoting job or quoting process, it's you're looking for information whether or not you have RFQs or not because you need to know what's going on in your supply chain. That's a lot of work. Maybe parsimony can help link that constant awareness. Here's the things that you've quoted in the past, and here's where we're pricing it now, so that I already know when, where, and how much the things are going to be, so I can answer Tom, who just said, "Hey, can you get me this thing in 3 weeks? Let me check it out." Click, click, click. No, I can't, but I can do it in 5. Okay, great. I'll place the order because the worst thing you can do is lie and say you get it fast. Then it's just a lot of angry emails for the next 4 weeks.
There are kind of two things to this. So one I'll touch on like the psychology of even just saying 5 weeks versus saying I can do it ASAP, and then it not happening ASAP. There's like a study that showed uh like the one of the reasons Uber took off is this: if you tell someone the time it would take to complete a task and is actually completing that time even earlier, there's less anxiety and they're actually more okay with it. Whereas if you told them an unknown time, meaning I don't know when, or you tell them it's gonna be early and it ends up being later because it's still unknown, right? So if you think about like waiting for a train, right? And it's like, hey, this train's gonna be here in 2 minutes, and you wait 2 minutes or a minute, is like boom there, cool. Like I look, what if there's nothing, no board, you just like, wait at the platform, not knowing when you're gonna get it, or it says, hey, it's arriving now, and there's no train. There's like a frustration that gets built up, whatever have you. Same thing with quoting. Sometimes like a buyer would be okay saying, understanding it's 5 weeks, no, for sure it's gonna be 5 weeks. Whereas you telling them, hey, it's gonna be 4 weeks or 3 weeks, ends up being like 5 weeks. It's like a mental shift. And then the second thing is like the suppliers and the factories and the shops that are gonna thrive in this new environment cannot be doing the things that they've been doing the past decade. It's just never gonna work. They have to change.
They got to change. They have to change immediately. First, they have to be aware that they need to change because many don't even realize it.
Yeah, and honestly, Eric, I think that's like the major thing. And you're actually seeing we're seeing younger shops coming out with like a younger generation and actually getting more business than some of the older like generation because they just understand this.
And they're out there and they're asking, "What else can I do for you?" Versus, "Okay, I took your order." It's like, "Hey, is there anything else that we can put our hat in the ring for to quote for you? Or what else you got going on? Maybe there's something we can do." It's like, and I say, like, "Why aren't you asking?" Well, they placed an order. I'm like, "Is that the only order they place a week?" Because I've done some value stream apps where people place 300 POs a day, and you got two of them. Like, there's a lot more. Why don't you ask? They may not even know you can do it. So why would they ask you if you don't tell them?
And you know what's interesting? So specifically on that topic, we basically built a feature within Parts Money that can scan the entire bill of material and then give the supplier the maximum components available to that shops. Meaning, like, look at like things like manufacturing methods or whatever have you.
Yeah, I saw that feature. That's pretty awesome because now it gives you awareness that they don't even have to ask you for. You can say, "Oh, well, we can do that," because they most buyer planners do not have a master's understanding of how everything's made and the equipment that's needed to make it. They just don't. They're they're being managed by purchase price variance and on-time deliveries for their supply chain, and that's their focus. Quality, how much, when am I going to get it, and is it good? So when I get it, I can use it. They're not saying, hey, wait a minute, this company has this type of fiber laser. They could also make this other component that we're buying from far away because he's the only one I could find. Well, I have that equipment. I can cut that part for you with this order and deliver at the same time. Oh, really? They don't know that.
And there might even be like a full price discount. So it's like, but our whole thesis is like technology can be that catalyst to help like bring to the buyer's attention those like Goldilocks deals where it's like, oh, I can like automatically expand my PO volume with customer A because the software is helping to identify more parts, right? Because I think a lot of the legacy like shops are relying on their sales team sending the email to the buyer, say, hey, here's a brochure, which by the way, let's be real, no one really reads a brochure. Like no one really like actually like after the first PO, it's like, cool, you're just a supplier for this. I might read the brochure if I'm stuck. I can't find someone else. But most likely I already found someone else.
But it requires some type of resistance or issue before they reset. Because if you're a buyer planner and you've got to manage 50,000 parts, why make more work for yourself to start revisiting things you've already solved? Like that's creating more work for you. And who wants to make their job harder? But it this helps make it easy where, hey, I noticed you sent this thing over. I can provide a proposal for this. Here you go. Oh wow, that's 25 cents less than my other supplier. And I can save on shipping. And you're already a good supplier with us. Yeah, we can service if you have all the technology. Or hey, I'm investing into automation, which can bring the price down. And I can also now do these other products that you need. Let me put my hat in the ring. It creates competition amongst the supply chain to get better at it, which means they need to start making the investments in the way they run their business so they can be competitive, which is a good thing because if there's no competition, you get lazy. And that's what happens too on the buyer side. If there's no forced competition between suppliers to make them do other things, they don't always take initiative until there's an issue. Hey, your PPV went up. You need to bring this price down. Then they start the shopping process because it's a lot of work. I have these conversations with large groups like, all you do is buy stuff all day. And they're like, you have any idea how much work it is to do shopping all day across the entire world to buy stuff? Like, you think I just play around on Amazon all day, clicking the button? Like, it doesn't work like that. She's like, yesterday I cut 150 purchase orders, me and my 2 team members, 150 in one day. That's a lot of paperwork. Some are 3 line items, some are 60, and some are one. She's like, that's a lot of work. She's like, I'm here till 7 o'clock some nights cutting purchase orders, just spending money. It's a hard job. And when you spend that money as a procurement team, you're responsible for the price that you got and the quality, even though that's someone else, but you bought it. Why'd you buy this?
Right. You brought two things that are really interesting. One is the common misconception of like the Amazon shopping list of, hey, if you're a supply chain manager, all you're just doing is going to Amazon and clicking buy to a bunch of different things, add a shopping cart, and then hit order. There's like so much complexity that goes into like having a PO go out, right? You even need to know who the vendors are because people don't talk about this, but there are scammers out there. They act like they're factories, but they're really not, right? The terms, right? Like there's something like during COVID, this is actually very prevalent. You had like uh I literally saw this. We saw a real estate company, like a broker, acting as an N95 manufacturer. Say, yeah, just give us money, you can make masks. It's like your real estate it was a real estate broker domain. It's like, come on, guys. Or there's like, hey, we have or this like fake marketplaces where it's like, hey, we have this like remember this like electronic storages where it's like it was hard to get anything like electronic. Yeah, there's like fake like marketplace websites where it's like, yeah, we have stock for this like random e-stop that you need, right? It's like, but no, it's actually a fake website. So there's like a lot of stuff that goes into just making that whole person like overall like, decision. And then the whole the other piece of it is like some people tend to make decisions based on just cost, right? When it right, whereas like there's so much more to purchasing than just cost, right? Is like there's quality, understanding like the actual like capability of that manufacturer, right? Can they do 10 times more than where you're getting it elsewhere? Or if you look at the overall landed cost, like you'd mentioned saving money on shipping, right? People don't really understand about like the landed cost of like, yeah, well, what is the total cost of owning this part?
Yeah. And if I overbuy, what's the cost to my discount if I need more warehouse space to hold it? Yeah, but I saved 6 cents, but you spent $300 more a week on handling and logistics to keep it in the freezer. Like, why'd you buy so much?
Absolutely. We would talk about like lean and Six Sigma and everything, right? It's like with lean, you want to spend and use as limited amount of resources and time as possible, right? So it's shaving off waste everywhere. One of the biggest problems is like people think like a bulk discount order of like 10,000 units of this component is actually a good decision versus maybe paying 10% more and having only five on hand, right? When you really need it as much. So like you end up just getting the parts, it sits in a warehouse. God forbid something happens in the warehouse where some of the parts go obsolete or it's like damaged or whatever have you. No one talks about that. But there's actually like a carrying cost of having that inventory that no one factors into the whole thing. So sometimes at the end of the day, you went to overseas or you went somewhere else to get this bulk discount.
Yeah, with an MOQ of a whole shipping container.
Right, a whole shipping container sit in the warehouse. You pay basically carrying cost of inventory just to house and just store this. By the time it actually implements this parts into the actual order, it's almost like double the amount you've actually spent, right? Where it's like if you just had just the time, yeah, you'd have paid more initially, but you would have had to have this inventory you had to have to get over and like sell. But yeah, people really they were like talk about that.
Yep. I had this conversation with my uncle just yesterday about butter. He's like, "Oh, I can get butter for this cheap." I'm like, "Where are you going to store it? That's a lot of butter." It's going to take a long time to sell all that butter. Yeah, but it'll be cheap. Like if you can move it right from the shipping dock to the customer, great. But if you got to store it somewhere, it's expensive. How fast can you sell it? Your profit margin starts to disappear. Like what I was saying, like your most profitable transaction for that is the first truckload that goes out the door. But after that, your margins start to shrink. Purchasing and planning departments, they're usually measured by purchase price variance, how much they pay for the part, not the total overall cost of buying, handling, holding, and the risk of obsolescence. The more high tech it is, the less you want to keep in your warehouse. Oh, yeah, this one, they came out with a new version. So now no one wants this one anymore. But I got a good deal on all this. Now you got to sell it for a fire sale for half what you paid for it because you got to move it because no one wants it. And you've got to incentivize the transaction at your expense. Plus, you've been holding it in a warehouse for 6 months and 9 months. And Amazon warehousing prices go up substantially in September. So whatever you got in there, it goes way up. So you better get rid of it before then if you're not selling it for the holidays.
You know, a good that's a fantastic example. A great analogy is like Costco. I'm a Costco member. I love Costco, right? Great deals and everything. But imagine getting like 2 dozen, like the big eggs or whatever have you, because of huge egg shortage, right? How much eggs can you actually consume, right?
How much can you store in your refrigerator?
Exactly. It's like at the end of the day, you're like, wait a minute, I had to throw some of the eggs out because it hit their expiration date and we couldn't consume all the eggs. It's like you literally just wasted money.
But you got a great deal on the eggs.
Exactly. But you at some point you should have just gone to Whole Foods, right? And just like pay the premium. At least you're gonna use it.
Buy 12 eggs at a time and they're fresh and you let them manage the inventory.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
So more people need to start thinking about like, okay, some things you can get from Costco, but some things you should probably get from Whole Foods or like somewhere else.
Yeah, somewhere that in smaller lots at a higher unit price that's high risk of perishable. I always like to talk about Dr. Joseph Deming's fourth point. Purchasing decisions shall be based on total overall cost, not purchase price alone. Why is this important? Because you may save $1, but it may cost you 10. And I have one on my LinkedIn page for a year, and I have an illustration of a guy looking at a bicycle 50% off with a missing wheel. The bike is $50, but how much is it going to cost you to replace that wheel? It could be more than what you paid for the bike. So why don't you just go get a bike that two wheels on it, and you don't have to put the time. Oh, we can bring this in, we can rework it. Don't worry. I'm like, okay, we're going to get the resources for this. So we're going to spend $10,000 in labor to save $500. But I can't just throw it away. I'm like, unfortunately, that might be the smarter solution, but that's terrible. Yes, it is. And so what we need to focus on is the total overall cost, not just what I paid for it, because there's hidden cost to everything. And like you said, there's a lot of eggs that go in the trash. And like the groceries that average person likely throws away every year is more than it ever should be. That's wasted food.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? This is like very timely because of all the tariff stuff, where we noticed that people are reacting with the tariffs by buying the ton of inventory before all the tariffs hit, right? But it's like I just like, you know, there's going to be huge inventory whiplash where people are going to realize, okay, well, we didn't have enough demand to actually order these many parts. We need money for cash flow. We probably need to sell some of this stuff. And to your point, it might be obsolete by then. It might be damaged. And you basically turn it into this like fire sale operation where it's like, okay, well, everything must go, 50% discount. But it's like you just lost money. Versus if you pay the tariff, you might still be like above water.
Yeah. Operating capital is really important. You got to pay your energy bill and you got to pay the workforce and you need to pay the suppliers that are delivering on time because they're not going to keep sending you things for free hoping to get paid either because they got people to pay as well. And if it's coming from overseas, you can't buy that stuff and pay later. You got to pay before it gets on the boat. FOB, X works. That's how it goes because it's very hard to get paid from international seas. It doesn't count. So, what would you recommend with all these things we talked about, right? So, what would you recommend for a company to implement smart, strategic supply chain concepts and ideas? Not just about lean, about how should you start looking at your organization because you're the supply chain master, even though you deny it. How should I look at my business as an organism because there's lots of moving things and working together? How should I look at my organization as an ecosystem, as a living breathing entity with lots of people and pieces in it for long-term thinking?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question that we kind of like think a lot about. So I'll say it boils down to like three things. So the first thing you want to basically address is the culture mindset of there's nothing sacred, right? The cultural mindset of like we're gonna make improvements and we're gonna improve on this long term. So if things are being done the same way 10 years ago, it has to change today. And by the way, this has to be a continuous improvement mindset. So not just like, hey, okay, we've made an improvement now, and now we're gonna now set this or forget it. No, it has to be like a constant improvement. It's like how can we get better? How can we make it like actual better? And then the second thing is around infrastructure, right? What are the tools that you have in place that helps your business run efficiently, effectively? This could be a mix of software. It could be a mix of like SOPs that you have employed internally that you just is really good, that it's repeatable. So we can talk about like Six Sigma and why like Six Sigma's process. Basically, it's like Six Sigma is a statistical process that people use a lot of times in like aerospace manufacturing to make sure things are repeatable and really low defects. But the main thing is making sure that things are repeatable, right? So you need to have an infrastructure that's repeatable that helps you win. I think the third thing is the people, right? Is like you need to have like people in place uh that have a lot of like understanding of what it takes to win, right? Um and like obviously the high level stuff of like operations, like knowing like good quality, whatever have you, like we can I think those are basic. But I'll say like people in terms of like people who show up and like for lack of better words, like have a team winning mindset of like let's go versus like I'm just here to punch a clock and like
What you're talking about is a leadership shift in the organization. It's about the team, not about me, I.
exactly. You said it really well. Like a team winning mindset. It's like how do we win together as a team? And I think it feeds all the way back on itself, right? With that winning mindset, you're gonna go back to number one and not have any sacred cows and iterate and constantly improve. But number two, you're gonna make sure you have an infrastructure in place to help you guys win, right? And so and with that, I would say like people need to be humble to know that they need help, right? I think some of the stuff we're talking about, like you actually need someone who's gonna round the bends. People like ECIC to understand. Okay, look, we've seen this movie play out way too many times. We know how this movie ends. Here's how to avoid this ending of tragedy that will likely happen if you keep on going down this route. I think a lot of people like think they can just go on YouTube and learn manufacturing.
Yeah, we've been doing this for 30 years. What are you going to tell me that I don't know? I'm like, well, I may not know everything you know, but I know things that you don't know. That's why we're here.
Exactly, and I would say like the same way you wouldn't want to learn how to be a lawyer on YouTube and go defend yourself in court, right? Like even though technically you can learn all the laws yourself.
But the stakes are high. You need a mentor. And if you want to get there fast, you get the right mentor. They'll get you there fast and you won't have those life tuition mistakes of, "Oh, I should have done this instead of this," because they've already done it. They've seen it multiple times. They can get you to the finish line with the fewest amount of injuries.
Exactly, and we're in a new paradigm where there's so many different moving pieces where that expertise actually is the deciding factor if you win or not, right? Because if someone else knows how to do it, they will win they'll win the market from you.
Yeah, because your customers are not as loyal as you believe they are. They're looking for the best price, the best delivery, and the good deal. And if your prices are going up and theirs didn't change, they shift. Their allegiance is to the last purchase order only. And that's not future mindset and how you should run your business on last year.
Actually, Eric, you brought up something that's it's so very much important and it's like a mindset shift where when you look at like historical like relationships within buyers and suppliers is primarily it's just survived off of I've known Tom for 30 years. Tom is my guy, right? That is going away, right? For one, Tom is retiring, right? Right. For one, Tom is retiring.
And Lisa's taken her role and she knows nothing about this and she has no allegiance to you, Bob.
But even that, let's even assume that Lisa knows what she's doing because she spent a lot of years under Tom learning everything. The problem is the buyer is completely different. The buyer has no history, right? The buyer is not measured on like, hey, how you use technology to actually move faster, how you actually the board cares about how do we have a risk resilient supply chain to insulate us from all the tariffs or anything going on. They don't care about a relationship. It's like the board cares about can we actually deliver to the customer and protect and have a better ecosystem or supply chain to help us win, right? Exactly. And so like there needs to be an evolution on the supplier end to understand that dynamic, but to compete in that dynamic, right? The relationships are still somewhere over there, but you still need to compete to stay in the game.
They're there, but you're not. It's not just you and the buyer anymore. It's you, the buyer, and the last internet search looking for your competitor.
Yeah,
I've watched it happen real time. And I see them looking and I'm like, what are you looking for? Oh, we're looking for a supplier that can do this. I'm like, the really sad part is like not everybody that's your supplier is even easy to find on the internet. You can't find them. Like I know they're there and it's hard for me to find them. Like, why are you guys not showing up on Google Maps? Oh, we don't need that. Like, what do you mean you don't need that? Well, yeah, like, well, we yeah, but 10 years from now, you're still not on Google Maps. How do you suppliers get your address? Oh, they can go to the website. But that's buyers are going on maps. They're going on even ChatGPT. They're asking AI for things. Like I found suppliers and stuff just by asking ChatGPT, and I didn't get the same results on my Google search because Google's not giving me authentic answers, as we all know. They're giving you what they want you to say. You need to be easy to find as a supplier. You can't rely on, well, last year we got this order. We went to the trade show. Companies are not spending the time and resources to go to trade shows anymore. I don't go to them. I go to the web version of it and I visit the entire booth set up and I call people that I'm interested in talking to. And I don't spend 4 days traveling in an airport eating airport food and getting stuck on a plane on the tarmac for 3 hours. Like I can avoid all that. I just go to the virtual one and I find all the same suppliers and I use the telephone and I call them.
exactly. And Eric, that is the future. That is the future of like what procurement is going to look like, what buyer relationships are going to look like.
That's a new business idea, Richard. Virtual trade shows.
Virtual trades. I would even say like what we're doing at Parts Money is basically just a virtual trade show where you're basically finding suppliers based on your RFP, right? And looking at specifics around the components you're looking to make, and then find the best supplier based on the component features. But I'll say like more people are going to be doing relationships over digital means, phone calls, emails, or what have you.
It's happening now. It's not gonna. It is today. I tried to get a virtual booth for the SME trade show in Massachusetts to promote my business. They wouldn't let me do it without a booth. I'm like, why can't I just run a virtual ad? Oh, you most need to be here. I'm like, what do I need to be there for? I don't want to be there. I'll pay you the money, but well, you got to get a booth. You should be here. Well, we don't usually feature someone on a banner if they're not here because the banner is to send them to your trade booth. No, I'm going to put a QR code. They're going to scan it and find me virtually sitting at my desk. Hey, how can I help you? Like, why would you do that? Because what's the point of investing all that money into the booth to go there and half the people don't remember you. You hand them flyers and stuff that they don't carry home because it weighs 1,400 pounds. They get your business card and like you have to follow up with them anyways. It's like the old way of doing this business stuff, and exhausting as it is, 2-3 days walking a trade show floor. It's like running a marathon. Your brain is shot, your body's shot, like you're exhausted, and then you got to get on a plane to go home. Like, why can't we have more frequent trade shows that are available? You go here and you're part of the community, like some meta ongoing trade show for supply chains that want to buy American.
Which, by the way, even if people went to trade shows, right? You're never gonna bat 100. Like you're never gonna bat like 1,000. Like you're never gonna get 100% completion. You're not gonna go to every single booth. You're gonna have every single conversation. And even if you did, right? You need a way to understand. Okay, when should I actually contact this vendor? Our minds work very differently, right? It's like it's if there's no like recency bias where I need this right now, you're not gonna remember. Right, you're not gonna remember that you talked to a supplier that had this niche capability that actually you're just never gonna remember. So there needs to be like a more digital, which is what Parts do is like more digital approach of like when you actually need it, and then boom, this supplier.
And like you said earlier, if someone loads something up and the supply chain can see, oh well, I can do that part. Let me throw my hat in the ring.
right. And then what's interesting is like some of those suppliers don't even go to these trade shows, right? So like even go to trade shows, people are hoping that all the suppliers that they're looking for are at that trade show.
Cost a lot of time and a lot of money to go to a trade show to get a bunch of list of businesses that you harass for the next 5 years, hoping they buy something. Because that's the reality. You get a list of 500 booth visitors, and they make you pay for that electronic thingy, and then you just start hammering through the list, and you and 400 other booths that their badge was scanned at are doing the same thing. That was just a tsunami. They need they need to buy a matchstick, and they're getting a tsunami of everything under the sun but the matchstick. And if you're the matchstick they need, like, why is it so difficult to connect those two things together? Trade shows are they're brutal. Like they're tough for the customer, and they're tough for the supplier.
Yeah, and that's a basic parts where it comes in. But I think the future is gonna be very interesting. I think it's definitely gonna be some people, if they don't change, are gonna end up just
Adapt or die.
exactly it's dying out. But most likely, I think if they have some sort of decent operations, private equity is probably gonna just end up buying them out and then do the actual adapting.
Yep. And they're looking for them as we speak. They're looking for the ones with the low lying fruit that aren't doing the basic things.
Yeah. Well, going back to where I said earlier about like manufacturing being a way for people to lift up their families out of poverty or just going and just generational wealth. I think the people who are gonna like do really well, the people can actually like maintain and hold on to their families' operations, but still adapt, right? Like the maybe the younger generation takes over and actually adapts the business and grows it or whatever have you. Um, because like at the end of the day, even private equity is not necessarily perfect. I think there's a lot of short-term thinking within private equity, right? Right, where manufacturing, I think manufacturing, if you do it well, is a long-term game, right? If you look at like the capex involved to run like a stamping operation, or forging operation. You're thinking decades, right? You're thinking decades. You're not thinking 5 years right off and then spin it. No, you're thinking decades. Like, hey, this forge or this press is literally a monument. It's a monument,
It takes 2 years to build,
right?
and it runs for 50 years.
Right.
Then you got to fix it.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what's interesting, which also like goes back to the same problem where it's like people don't want to change things because it's already written off. Or it's like, yeah, we have this like, I've been in shops where we've literally had like World War II era like machines just like still chipping away metal parts. It's like, well, it's completely written off. It's literally paying for itself. Like every part is just like printing money. It's like maybe you just have this like uh this guy who just knows how this machine sounds. So he knows like he's making a finicky noise. Like, I need to shim this over here.
Yep. He can feel it. Yep. That's not going to get you a new order. They're going to come visit, see that, and go, "You're excuse you still use that thing? Oh yeah, it's our best machine." No, okay, next supplier.
Yeah, so we're in a very interesting space with like you just have to keep adapting. You can't do the same things over and over again.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. That's why they call it continuous improvement. There's no such thing as finished.
It's true.
So, Richard, I want to invite you to share a few things about Parsimony and what you're there for the manufacturing community, and basically send them an invitation to come join the club.
Yeah, awesome. So quite simply, what we do at Parts is helping buyers and suppliers to connect and collaborate more effectively, right? And the way we do is we leverage AI principles to help people to identify the right amount of parts to go to each individual shop, right? And so if you're a buyer and you have existing suppliers or you look for new suppliers, you can basically use our software to analyze your entire bill of material and gives you a grouping of parts and to say, well, who's the right supplier you should actually give this grouping of parts to, right? It still allows for the human connection. We're not middlemen or anything, so we don't get involved in the whole procurement flow. We're just purely software that helps people to connect and collaborate more like effectively.
Amazing. Better use of your time, so you're not writing 1,000 emails and sending RFQs to no response. Well, thank you so much, Richard. This has been a fantastic experience for me, and hopefully for our listeners too. And they got some great tidbits of factual knowledge and experience out of all of this. So we invite everyone to subscribe on our YouTube and our other channels. We're also available on Spotify, and I'm sure Richard will set a future date for another one of these, and we'll cover a different subject matter of the world we know it in manufacturing.
I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
Same here. Always, every chat we have goes on for hours.
I really enjoy it because like there's so much we can actually cover, but like yeah, there's so many different things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.